What is up, guys? Jacob back here with a brand new Wild West episode. I am here in Springer, New Mexico, finally back after like 3 or 4 weeks. That's kind of creepy. So changed the schedule for the last 2 weeks. So the Mills Manson was supposed to come out next week for the finale. That's no longer gonna be happening. We're gonna be switching some things. So this Saturday, May 20th, I think, May 20th, the Mills Manson episode will be premiering on the channel, and I'm currently looking at the mansion right now, and it's very scary. It is. It's apparently haunted, so I have to go in with the good open arms, and yeah. So this Saturday, Mills Manson episode. Next Saturday, the 29th or something like that, is the livery stable with the Hobb family. But today, like I said, we're going to be checking out the Mills Manson with the new owner, Lucas Johnson. He's going to be giving us the rundown of the place, the history of it, and I'll be showing you guys all that. And there is going to be something special coming later this year with this place, and I'm not excited about that. But without further ado, make sure to subscribe to the channel, leave a like on this video, and let's get into the fourth and second to last episode of season 2 of the Wild West. Outside of the place, me and my mom came here in October for the first time. Had no idea this was even a place in this area, but apparently this place and the St. James Hotel in Cimarron are connected somehow. Just look at it. The new owner bought it a few years back, I think, and is now renovating it. But let's go tell them that we are here, and I am not excited, but yeah. So the owner is currently getting himself ready for the interview. I'm not too sure where we're doing it at, but I'm gonna be going in all the rooms. But this is one of the many rooms, and I'm pretty sure there was a rocking chair in there before, but the staircase is right through there, I'm guessing. But this is the entrance of the building, of the place. It's very, very old. I don't know what this room is. So right now I don't have any weird vibes or anything. Everything's kind of good. I'm breathing a little bit hard right now, but yeah, it might just be allergies. What is this? So yeah, I was here back in October for the first time, and with my mom. Kind of crazy. Looks like he's doing a lot of renovation. So yeah, this is the little front area of the place. I felt lightheaded. Here is was this in there? So I don't know what's through there. It might be the stairs actually. We were just in there, but so he told me I can kind of scrimmage around. This piano actually is kind of cool. I don't know if it works, but it was working when I came back downstairs. There's an outside view. Let's see if this door is unlocked, maybe. Okay, so I want to make sure this door doesn't like close on me or anything. Okay, I think we're good. So here's another door. Looks to be the backyard area. This is what I am not excited for. So I'm just gonna say this now for a warning that this place is supposedly haunted by the owner. That is terrifying. I told him I would kind of explore first on my own, get my reaction. This obviously isn't my first time. Okay. Exploring. Obviously, being in here, it is cold. It is. That door's kind of open. It is cold up here for no reason at all. I am terrified. So that third floor is where something grabbed my leg. Obviously, today's video we aren't really going into much of the hauntings. Maybe I feel lightheaded being in here. That's the rocking chair. So this is another room. So, yeah, apparently this place has a sort of a connection with the St. James Hotel. Don't necessarily know how it does. I don't remember coming in this room. I just gotta do a warning. I have this place listed as one of the ghost areas that I'm going to be going with me and some other people. And I'm hoping to do it at night, which is probably the worst thing to do if you're trying to catch evidence. But maybe we'll catch something on here. But obviously, we're going in here with good intentions. We're learning about the history of this place, of this building. The only reason why I was saving this for the finale next week is because of this, how big this place is. I do not want to go up there. I mean, obviously he lives here. I'm assuming he lives here by himself. I mean, he doesn't live here, but like he's working on the place. But I'm assuming he's not kind of okay. Yeah, we're gonna go back downstairs, see if he's ready. My breathing's kind of heavy right now. I do feel a bit lightheaded, which is not normal necessarily because I wasn't like this the first time I came here. But that was obviously with like more people. But yeah, let's go back downstairs. Let's meet the owner of the place and let's run on the history and explore more.
Well, I'll go ahead and tell you basically a chronological history of the mills.
Mm-hmm.
And if you want to know anything more while I'm going, just interject.
Okay.
Or afterwards, if you want to dig into any aspect of it, then just ask me questions.
Okay.
So hi, I'm Lucas Johnson. I bought the mills a couple of years ago, or maybe a year and a half or 2 years ago. And I did not know of the history of the house beforehand. I was merely raised down the river from here in Oklahoma, and wanted to buy a house in the area. So anyway, I wound up with this house and have dug into the history of it. It's very interesting. The house was built in 1877, or was begun in 1877 by a family who had come to the area from Canada, and they were a Quaker family. Melvin Mills was the son. His parents were Daniel and Hannah Mills, and his wife was Ella. But Melvin came to Elizabethtown in 1868. He was a lawyer there. While in Elizabethtown, he engaged in the vigilante gang of Elizabethtown, and that was a group of people who were members of the town, and in the mornings they would vote on various characters who would come into the town the night before, because Elizabeth was a rough place at that time. This is in 1868 and 69. And because Melvin was a Quaker and his family were Quakers, he did not engage in the voting as to what to do with the various people who had come into the town. But he did hold his cigar box, and the people of the town would vote with a black or white poker chip as to whether to kill or leave alone some of these characters who had come into the bars. And that seems to have set off a disagreement between Melvin and his father, and at that time his father went to what's now called the Mills Canyon, which is 30 miles south of here, and that's where he in 1869 took up with Canooch and the Southern Utes, and began what would become 14 miles of 14,000 fruit trees that paid for this house, and ultimately were demolished or devastated in a flood in 1904. And that's when, outside of here you see the railroad, but before 1904, it went through downtown Springer. But picking back up at 1869, Melvin's father left, and Melvin continued to hang out in Elizabethtown Cimarron when Elizabethtown kind of closed up because the gold wasn't that great. While in Cimarron, there was well, it's called a war, a fight. And it seems that the two people who were fighting, or at the heads of the different factions, were Melvin Mills and Clay Allison. And that's a whole very interesting story, but it ends with, well, it doesn't end. In 1877, Melvin came here to what would become Springer and plotted or bought off of the Maxwell land grant 3,000 acres, and that's what he plotted the town with, and this house was begun. At the same time, or concurrently, they had the apple orchards down in the Mills Canyon, and they were washed out in a flood in 1904. Melvin's father died in 1903. And they sold this house pretty much immediately to try to, when I say they, the family, which would have been Melvin, his wife, his mother, they had several adopted children, like 14. And also both his wife and his parents had lived here in the house with them. But they sold the house in 1904, maybe 05, and then the house was bought or held by I believe the Bank of Santa Fe, Thomas B. Catron's bank, but he never owned it. Then the house was owned by A.E. Carlton, and A.E. Carlton was the owner of the Lucky Strike in Cripple Creek, Colorado, and that was a very successful mine there. And with the money from that mine, or the gold from that mine, he bought all the other mines in Cripple Creek and then the Holly Sugar Company. And in the 1920s, he was an old man and bought this house and owned it until he died. When he died, it was liquidated with his estate, and it was purchased by the Cleggs, who were a ranching family from Des Moines. And they held it until late 70s, early 80s. And then Jerry Smith had it, and then Tim Hagman, and then I've come to own it now. So that's a sort of the long and short of the history.
Yeah.
Of the house.
So when I was last year in October, after I left, I was told that this place was connected somehow to Cimarron. Is it through Mills? Is how it's connected, or?
Well, so Cimarron was on. We'll take you back to the time. This town of what we call Springer today was originally a town called Las Garzas. And whenever Melvin bought the land off of the Maxwell land grant asserted that the town would be called Maxwell, but it seems that there was too much of a misunderstanding between Maxwell the town and Maxwell's house.
Mm-hmm.
And so 3 years after the town was built, and Melvin was already out of the good graces of the Maxwell land grant at that point, and they named it Springer. And Frank Springer was hired by the Maxwell land grant to represent them, especially in a court, in the Supreme Court, regarding the legality of the grant. So that's, well, I also at the time, to take you back to the time, there are two branches of the Santa Fe Trail. There's the mountain branch, which runs through Cimarron, and the Cimarron branch, which cuts through the dry Cimarron in Oklahoma. Why they get the name Cimarron is another very interesting story entitled The Seminole Tribe of Oklahoma. Or the Cimarronole of Oklahoma. The Cimarron branch cut through Kiowa territory, Kiowa and Apache and Comanche territory, which is the Great Plains, sort of a conjunction of the three. And that was only possible as the United States Army moved out and began to quell those disparate peoples. And so what had happened was Cimarron was on the mountain branch of the Santa Fe Trail, and as the territory became quote unquote more peaceful or under control or safe, let's say safe, traders had begun to come across the Great Plains, across from essentially from Clayton. And when that happened, they were crossing about 6 miles from here. Well, then at the same time, in 1877, the railroad was in or around La Junta, Colorado, and was coming this way. And they knew that it was not going to cross the territory on the old route through Cimarron, and was also going to be coming up the Arkansas and then turning, not coming across the plains. And so they knew that it was probably going to split the difference between the two trails, and this is 6 miles between the two trails right here. So that's part of the reason that Melvin, with Grant, is more probably appropriate. The owners of the Grant selected this area for the town.
Okay. And then I also heard that this place is supposedly haunted.
I would guess that the rumors of the haunting of this house probably have everything to do with, well, think about why this town is called Springer and not Mills. And the Mills were Quakers who did not name anything after themselves. But well, when the Colfax County War happened, it was at the time whenever the Apache and the Ute tribes were being removed from the area. Now, the Mills had lived with the Ute tribe in the Guadalupe Canyon, or the Mills Canyon, for 11 years at the time of their removal. And when Melvin was drug out of his stage after Toby was assassinated, and a rope was thrown around his neck and over the telegraph pole in front of the St. James, it was the Ute and the Apache tribes who, I believe there was a number of 2,000, came up on the hill on the south side of town to intercede on his behalf. And it would seem also that Melvin told the Maxwell land grant that it was not legal. And so if you can imagine, he wasn't a very popular person at the time. And I would guess that there was a lot of well, he didn't see the world in the same way as many people there. Is the house haunted? The house is haunting. The house is beautiful. The house was built with a purpose. There are rumors that there were tunnels underneath the house. There is certainly a water cistern outside of the house. In 1877, the most famous house in America was the president of the Underground Railroads, and this house is very similar. And what did that house have? It had tunnels and it had a water source underneath the house. And also to go to, I mentioned that you're from Cimarron.
Yes.
And Miami is next to Cimarron, right? Do you know where those names come from?
Not really, no. I thought they came from people that were named those for their last names. I'm not totally sure.
If you follow the Canadian across the panhandle of Texas and into Oklahoma, and then if you follow the dry Cimarron to the Cimarron into Oklahoma, you come to the northern and the southern border of what was in 1820 the reservation of land allotted to the Seminole of Florida. And the Seminole of Florida was originally the Cimarronole of Florida. And it is said now that Cimarron means wild and free.
Yeah.
But at the time of a conquistador, or in the language of the Castilian Trujillo in Spain, that Cimarron meant a runaway, which is slightly different than wild and free. And you can still hear, if you listen to the word words maroon. I'm sorry, not maroon. Maroon's a new word. Maraud
Mm-hmm.
or marooned, like on an island. Those speak to the original sort of same Latin derivative of cimarron. And now we have the color maroon, but that is a post sort of New World derivation of the word, and that comes from the runaway people who were living in the swamps of Florida or the Everglades, which is to say escaped slaves.
Mm-hmm.
And and that group, which the native tribes of which were the Miami or the Miami or the Muskegee, were all removed to Oklahoma. And when they were removed to Oklahoma, the group that had been living together in the Everglades of Florida began to break apart. And almost immediately, a leader of the Seminole, who was part of the Black Seminole, came to this area, and his name was John Horse or Wonkabi. And that group of people would eventually, I'm not sure of their full story yet, I'm still digging into it, but if you go down to Seminole, Texas on the Pecos,
Mm-hmm.
and then to Brackettville, Texas, and across into Coahuila, and you'll find El Nacimiento and the Black Muskegee right next to the Kickapoo, who went down to Mexico because it wasn't going all so well in, say, 1840 in Oklahoma. So that's part of the history that would have been remembered or well known in the area, certainly in 1850 and 1860.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what started that sort of tangent, but that, I guess, going back to the tunnels and the water source. In 1870, Oklahoma, the native peoples had been removed by Andrew Jackson in 1821 to Oklahoma, and then there had been a war with Mexico, which had formerly been Spain not too long before that. And then there had been a great fight over slavery in the United States. Now, why is the Panhandle of Oklahoma? Why do we have the Panhandle of Oklahoma today? Because when Texas wanted to be admitted into the United States, it had to lop off the top of its territory so that it could be admitted as a slave-holding state. Now, in the meantime, most of the slaves who had quote-unquote run away or were passing as native members had been living in Florida and had been removed to Oklahoma. Think of the black towns now around Tulsa, which was part of that diaspora. But the what we call Oklahoma today was then Indian territory, and people who had run away for freedom in Florida, when Florida was still Spanish lands, were worried about what was going to happen in Oklahoma, which is part of why you have the Black Muskegee down in Mexico today. So I guess the long story short, in 1870, after these great disruptions, and post Civil War, these people were from Canada, and they are Quakers.
Mm-hmm.
And they came out here to New Mexico, and they built this grand house. And if there were tunnels, and if that cistern, I would just imagine that part of it would have been to be, or with an eye on Oklahoma. Because at that time, there were people who were leaving Oklahoma. And at one time, pre-1820, Ohio Valley, or lands in the West, were quote-unquote reserved for the natives. But that hadn't played out so well. So I would guess that if there was a tunnel here, it was not so that people could sneak gold in and out of this basement.
Mm-hmm.
This basement held fruit. But it did have an idea on a time whenever they might be sneaking people in and out of this basement. And those people would have been coming from Oklahoma and heading southwest.
Okay.
So
So we are back. I am back here That was a very long interview with the new owner of the historic and I guess iconic Mills Manson. A lot of history, a lot of stuff, and I'm just gonna tell you guys right now. This place will be showing up again on my channel this year. Keep your eyes out for what's to come here. It's gonna be very exciting, and yeah, thank you guys so much for watching this brand new episode of the Wild West. I'll see you guys next week for the season 2 finale. Bye.